Good catch. Okay, as I said, I'm going to give you everything I know, so I'll be out of here in about 2 minutes. What we're going to do is kind of focus on this building facility, fire safety stuff. If you have questions along the way, I have 0 notes. I don't do stuff with notes when it comes to this. So we'll go whatever direction that you guys want to go with this. And at the end, we'll time it out so we're done in time so we get up and move whatever before break gets here. Because it's a sit for 2 straight hours, right? So, is there anything that we want to talk about other than the facility that's a burning question for someone in here? Otherwise, we'll just keep going. Okay, so this facility, clearly it's fully sprinkled, right? The silver things up on the lid, the whole building's sprinkled. So if there was a fire emergency in this building that nobody knew about, I don't know, a trash can's burning in a closet somewhere, the sprinklers would activate at 155 to 165 degrees. Okay. The reason I'm going through this is because the Dairy Queen commercial, the flamethrower, when everything went off, that only happens in prisons, cafeterias. It's more crowd control. That's not a real system. Okay. That makes everybody afraid of sprinkler systems right out of the get-go. Everybody thinks of water damage. It's bad. Okay. The way this building is set up, the way most buildings are set up, these are red, so the glass bulb, so it's 155 to 165 degrees. When one head hits that temperature, water comes out of that one head, okay? So we don't have to worry about our office and our computers and all that crazy stuff if there's a fire over here, right? Again, then most people focus on running the shut sprinklers off because they think the whole world's going to flood when essentially it's just that area, okay? Sprinkler buildings have major problems with fire for 2 reasons. And one is if the system's not maintained enough, okay? Or somebody just plain shuts it off to where they goes, oh, we want to protect the building from water damage, and then the fire flares back up, now the system's off, okay? So, most fires in Minnesota that are controlled by sprinklers, 1 to 2 heads go off. That's it, all right? Get into a factory or warehouse, obviously big things happen, we have ugly stuff in there, chemicals, plastic, all of that. Your church, office area, is all considered light hazard when it comes to fire. So it's the lightest it is. You're probably looking at, I haven't seen the calcs here in years, but a few gallons a minute coming out of each head, 10, 15, or a fire hose is 150 gallons a minute. Okay, so that's really the trade-off, right? So when that head activates, and it cools the surrounding area to less than 155 or 165, then no more heads go off. All right, fire's controlled. It might still be there, but it's controlled, it's small enough. You guys do your safety thing, whether it's an extinguisher or whatever. And I jumped ahead there, we'll get to that. But what happens when that water starts to run is there's a 35 to 45 second delay built into your system. And I know there is when we tested it when it was doing, okay? So what happens is the head goes off, water flows. When you look at the sprinkler system, the red boxes are about this big on the pipe. There's a flow valve in there. When water goes out the backside or out the nozzle, it has to come back in, so it lifts the paddle up. That 45 to 50 seconds, then after that, kicks an alarm and tells us to get moving here with the fire trucks. Okay? So if there's a fire here in a sprinkler building, we don't have to call 911 and mess around. No. 911 on the parking lot, cell phones are really good backup just in case something happened, right? But we don't have to do it in the office here. We got all the time in the world to get out. Sounds funny, but the national standard is within 5 minutes it's supposed to notify a fire department. Okay, because water is effectively putting the fire out. It's quicker than that, but we will be coming. You do have 1 or 2 pole stations in the building. I'm sure a couple grandkids have found them for you guys along the way. And very small amount of smoke detectors. The reason the smoke detectors aren't in this building because it's fully sprinkled, you have active fire protection and prevention. Okay? There's a smoke detector where the panel is, and I'm sure you know that. There's one above there, and what that's truly there for is so that system cries 1 time before, if there's a fire and smoke makes it go off 1 time to get us here. That's really what it's there for. So that's how this building works and how you're safe here. All right? The 3 main causes of fires in these type of occupancies are cooking, heating, and any form of incendiary, candles, matches, that sort of thing. It's the same in homes, to be honest with you. So, everybody says what are the three main causes of fire? It's men, women, and children, right? I don't know the order, but that's really what it is. It's men, women, that's the three causes, okay? But seriously, cooking, heating, and smoking, careless, embers, fire pit disposal, things like that, okay? So clearly you guys have cooking here, right? And we have open flames on the other side, which I know all the precautions are taken because that's been going on for hundreds of years in every church. But those are our two mains, right? Heating, as long as the systems are maintained, that's about the best you can do with that one. And keep the combustibles away, right? Don't pile it in front of the furnace. I know we're limited storage and that's kind of what happens, but that's how they overheat too. As far as the cooking, you have a hood suppression system above in the hoods. I know you do. As long as that's serviced every, I can't remember whether it's 6 months or a year here because of the light use. Usually it's 6 months, but we might have went to a year because of how light is used. That will activate if there's a fire underneath the hood again. When that activates, nothing will happen out here except the dust or that liquid or whatever. The heads out here will not go off when that goes off. Okay. Again, if that does not slow it to below 165, 155, then the sprinkler heads outside in that area will activate, but these aren't going off just because that did. Okay. If that goes off, again, it tells the panel tells the fire department. So if you have a grease fire in here, or I don't know, the phone rang or somebody's grandkid ran in and we got just a little bit too, things went on and it got too hot, we will end up coming here automatically on that as well. Okay. So, again, the main thing here is we service the systems and the heating stuff as well. That's really what we got. The open flames, heat source, combustible things, obviously around Christmas time, so things get a little bit more packed together and stuff. That was the big push years ago about real trees with no lights versus artificial trees with lights, and that hole in the tree lived through that. So that's kind of where that's at. All right. As far as if you discover a fire, okay, and you're the person that is unfortunate or fortunate enough to see one happen, there are fire extinguishers in here. There's one right there. There's one in the kitchen. I believe we put one in the office area. It's been a couple years since we built this clearly, but that would be 100% on your confidence level, your training level, or what you guys' policy is, right? There's no law that says, boy, there's a fire extinguisher, I have to use that, okay? If you don't feel safe, then by all means go outside, okay? This building's insured, right? It's also got sprinklers. There's a reason the fire extinguishers are positioned by exits, okay? And we go through at the beginning of a building and lay maps out on the new stuff, and the reason for that is never you want to be between, you don't ever want the fire between you and the way out if you choose to use one of these fire extinguishers. You want to be able to drop it and run, right? So that's why they're by the door, so you go there, get it, and then proceed to where there's a problem. Again, I'm not here to tell you using a fire extinguisher ever. That's on your confidence level, safety, all of that. I mean, you're clearly we can't replace people. So that they're there to help the building, but if you don't feel, I can't emphasize enough, don't use them if you don't want to. If you guys are trained and you feel good about it, or if it's small enough, by all means, do what you need to do, okay? Any questions on that? Because I know some people think that I shouldn't say that you shouldn't use fire extinguishers, or you should, but just, it's your confidence level is where it's at, okay? Anybody that's went to one of the demolition derbies at the fair, anytime you see we use them 10, 15 times a night on car fires, gas, grease, oil. It does make a mess, but so but it's a good thing if you feel good about it, okay? Chances are you probably get it in your eyes and your mouth, it's fine. 25 years I've been tasting that stuff, I'm okay yet. So, maybe, I guess, I don't know. And I'm doing this slow, no, so probably not, I don't know, but anyway. So that's kind of the deal with that, right? Again, your safety and your confidence level. Nobody's gonna ever care about, geez, that was really big, I decided to go outside, that's a good thing. In fact, the best thing you can tell me as a fire chief, if we come here and there's a fire, whoever it is, hey, everybody's out of the building. That brings me from here to about here, okay? We were at the Department of Fire a couple Fridays ago in another city. It was a good 45 minutes to an hour before they could say everybody wasn't there because it was an apartment and they were checking work and all these things and things, right? That gets a little more adventurous at that point. You start taking risks you probably wouldn't normally if it was just a building. So, segueing with that, when you guys do your fire alarms, or if you haven't done drills yet, we could probably sit down and talk about that at some point. The way we want to go about that is, it's always a good idea to know who didn't show up to work that day, okay? So again, somebody's not looking for you. And to have, whether it's one side of the building, the other side of the building, or by location, by department, however functions best for you guys, have like, I don't know, captains or somebody who's in charge of a certain amount of people if there's a fire emergency, right? So you can say, well, 3 of us weren't at work today because, I don't know, it was a nice summer day and everybody called in sick, right? Maybe it was COVID or whatever the deal is, right? But then you know. And the other piece of that is you want a meeting spot outside. Just like we spend 4 to 6 years talking to high school and kindergarten kids at various levels as they go up through the school, the meeting place is key, okay? All of our kids know how to get out of the school building and they all know where to meet, okay? If I go to Harvest Fellowship, or to Trinity, the kids go to the fire hydrants on the end. If I go to Harvest Fellowships, there's 3 oak trees. If I go to Pleasant View, there's different pieces of equipment. They all know where they're going to be. But nobody over the driving age outside of high school knows where to go, right? There's not a meeting place anywhere once you get into business, okay? So somewhere between senior year and our pretty good job, we forgot about getting out of buildings, okay? So that's what we want to work on. If we don't have that, like I said, I'd be happy to set that up or help come with it. We want to get meeting places. And it might be 2, it might be 3, depending on your physical location, how your day-to-day is, right? Maybe you're on that side of the building or, by the music stuff, and I don't know, it's the pathway to the fountain, right? Nothing has to be fancy, just so we know that we're in the same spot. And again, then that person can say, hey, I'm good, you're good, we're good, and then let the fire trucks know. Because you're going to have a couple minutes, or we've got to drive here. So that's the key thing. So if you want to practice those and have that special meeting place, the meeting place is key. I'm kind of a collector on fire history stuff, fire scene stuff. A lot of fire codes come out of major fires, okay? For example, Our Lady of the Angels School Fire in Chicago, there was a whole lot of people that didn't make it out of that building. It was a boiler room, non-separated stairs, and 1 exit, okay? So if you look at the construction of a lot of the religious schools, there was center exit, open stairs, whatever. Out of that fire came doors in school buildings and came doors and stairways and stuff. Coconut Grove Fire in Chicago killed 400 some people. They had a revolving door. The first person that fell became a 200-pound doorstop, right? So that's like when you went to Colburn's years ago, they had the revolving door, but there's 2 crash doors on either side. Plus, if you pushed on the doors, they opened. That came out of that fire. The meeting place the meeting place we're talking about came out of 2 pretty major fires out of schools where people didn't have meeting places, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that went on trying to find people, okay? At least once a week I get an article emailed to me on some national level where mom or dad's at work, there's a fire at home, they get a phone call, they come flying by, the fire trucks run into the house and everybody's at the neighbors, and then that person doesn't come home. So that's the accountability piece, okay? And that's what I'm saying. If you don't have that here, work on getting that at home too. Because again, the kids at school know where to go. They absolutely know where to go. At home, when you get younger kids or older kids, that we always emphasize the neighbors because, well, it's winter here in Minnesota, like most of the time, and you leave without shoes and socks and get to the neighbor's house. Plus, they have phones. That's the other thing. We tell the little kids they got cookies and toys too, right? That gets them there. So that's the big deal with the meeting place, and that'll keep you guys safe here as well. Also, then somebody, when we work through this, would be appointed as a contact for the fire department meeting in the parking lot. No phones or nothing special, just the first truck that comes. Hey, we're missing somebody, or no, we're not. That's really what we need to know. Okay. And with that fire safety plan that we're kind of going to work on. That's when I would identify the parameters on fire extinguisher use based upon what the parish feels comfortable and not comfortable. And me personally, I mean, it'd be an individual how you feel, but I mean, I know I work in a lot of businesses doing this stuff and a lot of our warehouses. Whatever their procedure and their policies are, obviously override anything I'm saying about this, so however you guys write that, okay? That's the big deal. From the fire standpoint, as the fire chief, clearly if you guys could identify your drills, or I mean, you guys get going on drills if you're not, and then have a point person to let us know what's going on. The other thing is, from our standpoint, if it's during the day, it's great when the maintenance professional's with us and has keys. I mean, outside, right? That's a huge help to us, so if that could be identified in that. If we have to use ways to get in, it gets expensive, because glass doors break real easy, so we don't want to do that real easy. That's why the lock boxes are on the side. If anybody's ever noticed the red box on the side of the building kind of sunk in, we do have keys to the building, okay? And that's more for a false alarm situation or midnight when nobody's here. Hopefully nobody's here at midnight, but there's an alarm that goes off, then we can enter the building without obstruction, right? If there's a fire, you guys don't care, insurance is already involved. So, yeah, and as far as when this building does alarm and tell you there's a fire, there are a limited number of horn strobes in certain areas of the building. It's not a full-on like an auditorium would be, but you do have those. I know there's some in the office areas. I remember a couple of them weren't synced up right, and I know there's some on the other side of the building. The other thing you guys have here, all the exits are marked with battery backed up lights, and they all have, this building was new enough it has LED emergency lighting, which means they're going to last a lot longer, which is great, and they're a lot brighter, just the way these heads work. You also have them on the outsides of some of the major exits too, in case it was dark, so you can get to the grass decent too without tripping. Yeah, this does this. And speaking of tripping, and I see we have the wheelchairs and stuff there, part of our plan would be then, as the parish here, if we have to help, or how we help people with some form of special need to help out of the building. At the school, I have some students that if there's an alarm that comes in, I am told by the paging system that student X has this disability, will be in this stairwell, or student Y can't get off the second floor kind of thing, and there's aids there by the stair chairs and things. Similar to here, if you ran, part of your plan as you're building it, if you ran into a situation like that, it'd be nice where you had that in the plan, where maybe we have a one-to-one help somebody out. If it's a frequent person that we can plan with, that's a really good, helpful thing. And not just physical disabilities. We have situations where we have kids that the flashing lights and the noise isn't a good scenario either, so I know if there's fires in some of those buildings where some of those folks are located, so we can help them a little differently too. So just something to think about for your plan. As far as the other thing would be the open flames. We've touched on all the systems. I mean, you guys are at church, you know, open flames, you're good at it. That's kind of what you do. So that's really the big thing on that end. You don't have a problem with that because that's what you do. So wrapping back to this though, the whole alarm thing, we'll do the meeting place and then the whole meeting place. So probably if anything you get out, so the two things that we'll say for somebody else, they really will. I guess the other thing too, when you're planning your escape routes and stuff, you're going to want to know 2 ways out of every room. Okay. Pretty easy in this room. You got 3, but that's maybe it gets a little more neck down as you're in some of the back areas of the offices. Because if I remember right, the offices are basically one way in a long tunnel and one way back out, right? Mm-hmm. So 2 ways. Yet that's the old if the door is hot or smoke, you got that extra way. Okay. If you do have a door that's shut and the alarms do go off or there is a fire, what you want to do is you want to feel the door at the back of your hand. This goes for at home too, clearly. but use the back of your hand because of reflexes. If it's, I've been talking over here the whole time. Reason to use the back of your hand just simply because of reflexes, right? If something's hot and you grab it, your hand's going to make a fist. So it's going to protect itself this way, which actually is going to burn itself worse. So if you use the back of your hand, it makes a fist, you actually pull away. If any of your kids came home in kindergarten in first grade, that was their most amazing thing with the fire stuff, crawling on the floor with that. But that is the deal, the back of the hand. Door's not hot, open it up. There's smoke one way, go the other way. You got two options, this is a business, okay? It's really as easy as it gets. If you get caught in smoke between here and the exit, the lower the better. Smoke rises, clearly. So if you think of this as a container, and if you think of it upside down and you're pouring water or milk in it, it'll fill up and spill out. So what happens is, say there's a kitchen fire and it's not controlled, which far-fetched, but it would come out here and fill this room with smoke and then start coming down, okay? That's why, to be quite honest, that fire we were at in the other city the other week, we rescued a black lab an hour after the building was on fire because they're down here and everything was good. But the same deal. If you get caught between where you're starting to and the exit point, and smoke get low, right? You crouch down and keep moving. If it's real bad, you gotta crawl. It's just kind of the way it is. If you ever look at our fire gear, we have doubled up knees, the elbows are that way. And if you ever look at fire boots that are older, the toes are a different color, and that's because of crawling. We have to crawl on that stuff. So if you have a fire and it's going good where you can't see it, it's whatever, we will be crawling as well. So, but you're gonna have the great opportunity here of having a sprinkler building with what's called cold smoke. It'll be a light whitish, more of a tinge where the fire's not active, and you'll be able to walk out or crouch down a little bit. So.
Can you repeat that sentence?
The cold smoke?
Yeah.
Okay, so with this being sprinkler, let's just say the fire is in the garbage cans, right? Pretty realistic. That sprinkler head activates, starts to control that fire. Possibly this one activates, probably not. But, so we're gonna have active fire there, it's gonna be dumbed down a little bit or darkened out, and then we're gonna have this kind of white, lazy, colder smoke. It's kind of more wispy. That you'll be able to walk underneath, though you don't want to breathe it still, you'll be able to walk underneath and safely exit there. Whereas if you didn't have a sprinkler building, especially with that plastic going there, it would be the blackest, and clearly it'll be black until it starts to get water, but it would be the blackest, grossest, nastiest. Everybody's seen somebody throw a pop bottle on fire, right? I mean, so, again, with it being sprinklered, it'll be more lazy, a whiter smoke, and you'll be able to walk pretty much right underneath it. The nice thing is with you guys, again, 155 degrees doesn't take a whole lot to get to, so there's a lot of things that can happen safely. They do a sprinkler trailer at State Fire Marshal's Division where they'll actually put two people sitting, they'll light the fire above where you guys are, plexiglass between the sprinkler goes off and they're fine. So, and I know Brent is going to overlap on this too, but part of you guys will plan to identify where the AEDs are. Clearly that's, it's not a fire deal, but it's safety, especially with the amount of people that come through here. I know some of our firefighters have used your AED out here during the bazaar, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. So, I think they were cooking, right? And they ran out the jazz guys and Neil. So, they work. And if you identify them and think about AEDs, you have them, there's probably a nurse in here that's better at stuff than I am. But, you know, your 1 to 10 minute thing with CPR, you know, first gets quicker the better. So that's the best thing there. So going back to that, we'll get our meeting places. You guys know where the hydrants are. That's something we want marked, just because of parking and whatever else. Maybe a new nativity scene or something. We don't want to incorporate the fire hydrant as part of it. Seen that. Wasn't here, but I have seen that. It's a shoot. The only spot where we do wrap holes around them. There's a couple things that are real about firefighting and TV. They do wrap holes around them and drive away. That part that's real. There really is smoke and fires, not the ones where they're walking around. But that is a real deal. So I mean, decorations, stuff like that show up around hydrants all the time. Help us help you, basically, right? As far as made a comment about winter being so long around here. Make sure the doors can open. I mean, snow drifts. Nobody here's strong enough to push that door out of a foot snow drift in front of it. I mean, it's a big deal. When I worked for another city, when we had more staffing, we would drive around after every snowstorm and make sure that all the restaurant doors were open before we would start. So, as I'm seeing all the exits, we get them so we can open, and that's a huge, huge deal. I think that's. And then wherever you guys would store chemicals, that'd be the other thing. But this is not a high volume chemical. You get cleaning supplies is probably the biggest one, right? I mean, just make sure they're not in furnace rooms where ignitable vapors. The old picture on the water heater with the gas can tipped over and the vapors and it kicks in. That's a real deal. That happens. We see quite a bit, at least 2-3 times a year in our little world. So, any big ignitable vapors you're going to want to keep away from furnaces, water heaters, things like that. Clearly out of the kitchen. So, did anybody have any questions for me specifically? I know I talk fast and I move around, so you're not going to offend me. I actually think that's possible. That's good.
So there's 472 people in church Sunday morning. Suddenly there is smoke. What should happen?
You took the candle over, didn't you?
Started the incense.
They lit the altar cloth on.
His homily was so good that he was just fine.
Smoking, yeah. Smoking. Ironic, I'll get to that. We were at a Fire Chiefs Conference in St. Cloud about 10, 12 years. It doesn't matter. The point is, there's 500 some fire chiefs in one of the convention centers in St. Cloud, and they have those little candle things warming up the food. Yep. So the tablecloth starts on fire, and everybody's watching this thing like, this can't really be happening. But anyways, so that's a great question. So there's 472 people in church. There is a fire somewhere discovered. Somebody comes and screaming fire. It's not where they know it's at, right? So you would be the most, or whoever was speaking at the time, okay? Because they got something called crowd managers at concerts. We've all been there. If you've been in the convention center for stuff, you see Minneapolis St. Paul Fire people walking around occasionally in little shows and whatever. They're called crowd managers. Thank you for bringing this up. So you could be the voice of reason. You have a microphone. Hey, yep, we have an emergency building. Calm down. Just walk to the nearest, because the chances are you're going to have to repeat it a few times, but please proceed to the nearest exit. Maybe you point out, if I'm from your standpoint, we have exits to the sides, so everybody doesn't go, oh, I came in that way. That's the only way out of this place. Because that's what happens. To be honest with you, this building here, this room that we're in, so we got 2 smaller exits here, right? That is designed for 1/2 of the people to go. Okay? The reason that has to be designed for 1/2 is because of the herding instinct, and we would go, everybody's driven by the farm or is a farmer and knows where the cows walk, right? I mean, don't walk over here, everybody's got to be. So that has to take 1/2 of the people. What happens is 90% of people go that way and 3 people walk this way and they're standing outside 10 minutes before. So that's a great thing. You guys have the microphones at that point. Remain calm. You have an emergency. Please proceed to your nearest exit. There's some, the best you do to direct traffic. Because even though you're the farthest person from the exit in most scenarios on Sundays, you'll probably be the first person out if you just went like this. That clearly you wouldn't, but I'm just saying. Remain seated. That's what I mean.
Goes outside, then he goes
Because these exits are unused to your side. So if you could point, and if 30% of the people would go like that, this place would be empty. So you guys have attention. You got the microphones. You please proceed to the nearest with caution. Walk. The other thing is, the kids are very good about this in school. We pull fire alarms at the school week, fire prevention week. Literally, the school staff doesn't like that we do that. We interrupt the state tests, picture days. It's just, but we do it because fires aren't planned, right? We we got a little more smart along the way and asked them what things are, but from kindergarten on to about high school. First kid will come out, hold the door, get her on the backside, hold the door. Everybody walks out, they shut the door. Instead of open, stop, open, stop. So that's something else that you could say. You know, the first person could you hold. Maybe it's the ushers, right? I mean, maybe that's, you kind of got the layout of the land anyways. You know, obviously, clearly you got the mics and you can direct traffic. Maybe part of your plan is each usher grabs door A, B, C, D, or E, or part of the cases, right? And they hold the door, gets them all first too, right? Another incentive to be an usher. No, then they hold the door open on the back side, and then they can help with that evacuating. Because clearly, you know the time frame. We start adding 5 seconds times 472. That's a bad day, right? But again, they can remain calm. You are sprinkling. We have a safe building. Okay.
Maybe occasionally, even an announcement at church, because I think the two exits, you know, by Mary and by the organ, I mean, people just don't think of those, even though they're right there. I mean, people.
A lot like the other windows.
Yep.
And everything else.
Exactly. So I mean, not that we, you know, I mean, if you want to do a fire drill at the end of mass or something, but wait till the closing song. But yeah, maybe letting people know occasionally that those are there. You know, I think might be a nice announcement, because we could get a lot of people just from those back corners.
You know, and maybe the start of the holiday seasons, right, when population picks up a little bit, or a little review here and there. I mean, you take, like I said, I study old fires. They really happened, right? It's not hypothetical. You take that Rhode Island nightclub fire, took out 100 people, right? Fireworks. Similar layout to here, but I mean, where you have the front, everybody's paying attention, you have seating, right? There was an exit. We've all seen that video, I'm sure. Great White started the fireworks, and then, okay. There was an exit right here where the stage was. 2 people died on that stage. The guy went like this, walked 5 people that way. He got in the back of the crowd going for that, unfortunately, right? So, I mean, you guys have a lot of power helping people with that, and we get the ushers going in the mix as crowd managers, if you will, right? I mean, it's a huge scenario. Like I said, if anybody's ever seen that video, it's not a fun video to watch, but you can learn a lot from what those poor people sacrificed to learn. But 2 minutes was the time frame from fire till it's a bad day, you know. So, similar scenario: front, point the exits out, and calmly. Your sprinkler, that's the difference between you guys. I mean, that whole thing was a lot of other things, but your sprinkler again, and you don't have foam on the ceiling. Some of the decorations, the sound deadening things that we look at, all this deadened sound, most of them are foam, most of them don't belong in the buildings. But it happens quite a bit when churches are built. I'll ask for the sound deadening stuff, and we'll reject a few times till we get back and forth and get the right ones. The reason the right ones aren't the first ones given to you is because the right ones cost this much, right? And the other ones are this much. So there are sound deadening devices that are foam, that are flame smoke retardant. So smoke is probably your biggest enemy in a building like this. If it happens, it travels faster than fire. That's again my comment about sprinkler smoke is a little bit slower and wispier. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other?
I would just like to comment on one thing he said. My dad was fire chief in White Park or whatever, and he used to talk about the smoke filling a building, and I always thought that was interesting. In about 1989, we had a fire in the laundry out of the prison, and that was my area. And so I responded, and the fire was going pretty good when I got there. And it was amazing how fast the smoke came up, and like the chief said, it came down like a curtain. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And we had inmates to get it the hell out of there, and staff. And it ended up just like the chief said, we had to get them down on the floor crawling, because you could not see anything. And I was probably the second last guy out of the door, and I slammed the door shut, and then the fire department arrived. But I mean, it was just amazing how fast that, like, just like somebody was dropping a curtain on a stage. And it was just black, you couldn't see it then. So be aware of that, get moving.
Yeah, it's the key, get moving. And part of the planning is where we're going. It's pretty simple stuff.
And then our bad thing is, we only had one way out.
Right.
There was another set of exit doors, but there was a lock for security, you know?
Sure.
Not anymore, but I mean, at that time.
And now the whole prison got retro sprinklered finally.
Yep.
That'd have been nice then, right? I wasn't kidding about the deluge system in the dining room, was I?
No. The water really comes out.
Well, it does. Yeah, so the smoke deal is really, go ahead.
I was interested in what you said about the kitchen in the hoods. Can you say a little bit more on that? Is that just to sense the extra heat, or will it actually spray something?
Okay, so I'll have to take a look. It's been a while, but what it had in there was fusible links. I can't remember what degree they would go off, right? So the system was under tension, so that solder plate basically would melt out at a certain temperature. Then these rods are under, cables are under pressure, and they slam, and it pokes a pin through basically a fire extinguisher that's up in a cabinet. Okay, but it's liquid and it's a one-shot deal. All right. A few McDonald's burned down here and there. You guys see that, right? Well, that's where the. Well, that's an interesting noise coming from the kitchen. No, they, you know, they're a one-shot deal. They work or they don't. Clearly, they work most of the time. I've had 2 fires in 5 years in restaurants in the city that you don't know about. Not because it's a secret, but they're open the next day. They work. Okay. If that doesn't work, then we have the sprinklers outside. Your Type 2 hoods, and if this is a Type 2 hood just for warming, I don't believe it was. Sprinkler heads on the outside will activate and they're spaced accordingly, so they can tip underneath the hood. Yeah, I got it. No, you have Type 1. I can see the pull station. So that's exactly how yours works. At a certain temperature, and I don't know what the temperature is based on what your cooking load was. So we did a survey when they built the building or something. And there really is, it looks like those S hooks that are on a key.
It's the ice machine.
I was gonna
It was
say,
the ice machine.
Timing. So those S hooks would go into a metal plate. It's 2 different types of metal. One is a lower temperature. So literally when that melts and drops out, like when you're soldering or wood burning, then it goes like this, it pops a pin, and liquid goes through. So you have nozzles, metal nozzles in there. Liquid comes through and they're pointed at each particular appliance. So that's why your appliances are positioned in such a way there. If they're ever moved, you reconfigure things. A liquid comes out, it's either, depending on whether it's R102 or whatever, it's either going to look like antifreeze or it's going to look like pink antifreeze or green antifreeze. That's just the way it is. It's a clean agent, it's not corrosive, it's not going to hurt anything, it's a cleanup deal. So you are very safe in there. And also, the end part is now, when I see it on that door, I guess there's a red thing there that says pull in case of fire. That's not like a pull station where you're used to just pulling. That you might have to pull out 10, 12 inches because again, you're activating cables and pulling. But you absolutely will know when it activates. You're not in danger, but when you hit it, it first crushes a nitrogen bottle. So you're gonna hear the sound that's charging the system, and then it dumps the agent. There should be a silver, I can't see it, there'll be a silver box about this big adjacent to the hood or somewhere in the kitchen. That's where the agent is. Essentially, it's fire extinguishers upside down with liquid in them instead of powder. Okay? Because that is new enough, that's a liquid system. Powder comes out of the wall once, but that'll be a liquid. Yeah, go ahead.
I also wanted to thank you specifically for the comment you made about those people that have other special needs that may not be the wheelchair needs. My son would have been one that would have froze in the flashing lights and the sound, and not everybody thinks of that. So yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that.
No, we're actually, to be honest with you, there's an industry trend. You know, clearly national codes are bigger than the guy in Sauk Rapids, but I mean, we enforce what they are, but we do have some say. There's a national trend toward less audibility on the alarms because they don't have to be to the point where they're breaking your eardrums, and it is driving some people with special needs a little bit farther than anybody needs to be, you know. Also, when I made the comment about, I know your office is more of a longer tunnel because the strobes didn't sink at one point somewhere back there. with the ADA stuff, they have to sync, so they're not, people that are photosensitive, so you don't have a flash and flash and flash, it's just one time, because that's been a seizure problem for some people, so there's a lot of thought going into that stuff at a national level, so. It is. Anybody have anything else?
Like a wet and dry system here, like.
Okay,
So
so,
hook up from outside if it was bad fire or?
yeah, so the fire connection out front for us, these are wet here, meaning, there's water directly above my head if that red, okay? I believe, and this was, I was down working in the cities, your attic system is a dry system over the church where the wood is. So that would be the sprinkler pipe in the back room that comes up with the water, and the riser would come up, and there'd be a big red thing about like that. So what that is it's a surface area volume thing, meaning you gotta keep the water down or it'll freeze. So there's a big plate in that, it's either red or black, depending which type or simple, whatever. So it's that big, there's a plate there, it's keeping the water down, there's air pressure on top, right? So when a head would go off in the attic, then it has to empty enough air out when it finally does, and then it goes boom, and the water hammer and shakes the pipes, and then the water heads up to the attic. So the attic, the non-heated areas are a dry system, still sprinkler, just a little bit of delay on the water there. Everything that's heated down is water in the pipes. That's a good question. They're both serviced annually and both by the same person that's on your tags, whether it's Simplex, ADT, whoever you guys use. So yes, there's a dry system above that attic. And the kitchen system is wet.
So even in church, it's sprinkler head specific to which ones would go off?
I don't think you've probably been in a building your life that's not that way.
Okay.
I've been in one. Okay.
Because they're triggered by heat, not smoke.
Individually by heat, yep, you could, okay, the incense smoke. Never in a million years would I set that up. No. You probably couldn't see it here before it would be 155 degrees. Never. Okay, you never have to worry about that. Some places have beam detectors where they have beams and a balloon will set them off. You don't have anything like that here. It's going to take 155 to 165 at the ceiling in the church to do it.
That's going to be.
It's going to get bigger in there.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's your 1 to 2, maybe 3 has, So the way, more than anybody cares, but the way sprinkler systems are designed is they're designed a certain square feet that a fire will be controlled by the building without any help. So your light hazard here, so it's probably 12 to 1,500 square foot fire, which is a pretty good sized fire, right? That the building will handle by itself. It's the designer. Once it gets bigger than that, the fire trucks better be here plugging in. Well, it's not going to get bigger than that because of what we just said. We're still going to plug in and offer assistance, right? But we don't need to. I mean, we really don't. Now you get to a warehouse, maybe 400 or 500 or whatever, that's different. But here, being light hazard, that's the light hazard that's based on sprinklers. So realistically, you could have a good part of this room on fire and you wouldn't even need a fire truck. No, we complete a mess up clearly with the smoke and whatever, and obviously we're calming, but just so you feel better, I mean, it's made to help itself. Now, again, the two things that burn sprinkler buildings down, right, are people that shut valves off too early and not servicing them. Okay. And then if you get a weird fire in a weird place like Roosevelt School, it's clearly sprinkled, but got hit by lightning and there was addition after addition and non-sprinklered. I mean, there's just some buildings that are going to burn, too, unfortunately.
So, and Cindy's here from Mayo Lake as well. Just for my own interest,
Put a fire out in that church.
where would the fire department come from?
Here.
Okay.
Yep, so, here, and then if there truly was a fire, we would have Rice come with tanker trucks. And then if it was bigger, it'd be fully. We were in, Father Britz's basement, or who the priest was at the time when the furnace was on fire, about 10, 15 years ago, I think. But yeah, it's from us. So when you get to Mayo Lake, the next farm up a mile or so on the right, the Bamboo Farm, that's our last building. And then we meet Rice. When you take it right at the town of Mayo Lake, we meet Foley. after you get through a whole bunch of bamboo farms. It's really what it is, you know. So we do the western 2/3 of Main Lake. Foley does the western third. Okay. Just like we do the bottom of Watap, the southern 2/3. Rice does the top, you know, lower lake starts. So.
You look in those old buildings and you see why building instruction has changed. I mean, they're too small exits, steps everywhere. It'd be really, really hard to get people out.
Yes, and even, you know, okay, the exit to the left, you know, or some of the churches, you know, maybe there's one to the right or whatever. Yes, and then our poor, the population's a little older on Sunday mornings in some buildings than others, and then you got the stairs like that, right?
And an elevator, but you shouldn't use it.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you, if that was the only way you can get out of the building, I'm sure use it.
Yeah.
That's changing too, ever since 9/11 and the use of some of the elevators and stairwells for the evacuation from 70-some floors. There's a big study. New York Fire is a big leader in fire codes, to be clearly it's New York. And there's already a lot of things going about life safety elevators or how to use an elevator in an emergency and things like that. I mean, clearly get out of the building any way you can, right? You know, not here per se for any orderly, but in that scenario, you know, so.
Yeah, one of my, as we said, one of my biggest concerns are the mobility of our seniors. Just easily falling and tripping and thinking of my own dad and others that just, you know, they could be knocked over super easily.
And trying, you know, there's a stat out there. I was just in a training conference on another fire code deal, but moving toward fire service, educating more about slip, trips, and falls also, because they're hurting way more people right now than fires are. I don't know whether that's good or bad. It's what it is. So they want us to start focusing on our safety talks with different populations. Slips, trips, falls, rugs. Get rid of the rugs in the kitchen. There's not a rug in the kitchen worth being there because everybody slips on it at one point. I've done it. I mean, it's just what it is, you know. But I know the discussion would go trying to get them out of certain houses in my family. People that are one generation above me, so I get that, you know. But and the other thing with the burn prevention too, with the kitchen safety, is again not just talk, but the towels on the stoves, because kids climb and they grab the pot handles, or they dip. I mean, that's just the way it goes. They pull. You know, look at that. What do kids do when they come up to you? They climb. That's how a lot of people get hurt in kitchens. That's where the pot handles in versus out. So, anything else? Geez, I ran a little long. Sorry, it's 5.